Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone around the world. And I'm so excited to be here today talking about Africa and our beloved Africa. And we're all gathered here today in front of our computer screens, tuning in from around the world to celebrate this important week. And we have come a long way. This would not have happened without technology that has enabled us to connect more than ever before. We're lucky to be living in this time with all the privileges and potentials that our mothers and grandmothers didn't have. Yes, life is still hard for many, and that's why we have to work harder and strive to help those who are underprivileged to lead a decent life. As a child in Alexandra, Egypt, we didn't have a fraction of what young people are enjoying today. So let me tell you a little bit about my childhood. We had 2 TV channels. I know it's shocking, but what's even more shocking is they were black and white. And the TVs were neither flat nor mounted on walls, just a ridiculous, massive black bulk that weighed about 50 kilos, 100 pounds, with bulged screens and fat bellies resting on a piece of furniture taking center stage of your living room. And there were no devices that you could hold in your hand and play with, so I was my parents' remote control. So let me tell you a story of a weekly comedy mini-series I watched with my family when I was young. I wasn't really thrilled about it, but with the limited choices that we had and that was available, you didn't want to miss a TV show. This mini-series was about a middle-aged, disheveled man. He lived in a basement room that belonged to a landlady. His room looked like Van Gogh's painting, just bare-bone room, but it was surrounded with bookshelves. Perpetually broke, Mr. Disheveled was on the run from his lunatic landlord because all his money he spent on books, and he rarely had any left to pay for his rent. So the mini-series was like a cat and mouse chase between them, like a human Tom and Jerry in my mind. The landlady had a daughter, Tufaha her name, which means apple in Arabic. She used to cover up for Mr. Disheveled, and she helped him hide from her mother. The landlady's daughter, Tufaha, she was very pretty, and she was captivated by the intellect and knowledge she shared with Mr. Disheveled. She often sought refuge in the basement as well when her mother was throwing one of her fits. So while they were in hiding, they used to talk a lot. Apple's glorious fascination with Ernest Hemingway's The Snows of Kilimanjaro was nothing compared to mine. Hers was acting, but my fascination was genuine. Africa I knew as a child had deserts, forests, savannas, rivers, valleys, and mountains too, but one covered with snow, who would have known? Who would have imagined in my little mind? Summers in Egypt were hot, and the only snow I saw was in our freezer. Freezers, when I was a child, looked like ski slopes. My mother would unplug the fridge every few days for the snow to melt. And I consider that now as my first encounter with climate change. But Kilimanjaro, you cannot forget such a musical name. But with no Google, for many years to come, my knowledge of the mountain remained limited. And to tell you the truth, other than being intrigued by its exotic name, I had no urge or desire to climb it. I didn't even know that people climb mountains as a hobby. Kilimanjaro, or Kili, this spectacular volcanic mountain, the UNESCO World Heritage Site, remained dormant for many years in real life and inside of me. But my fascination with Africa just kept building. Fast forward to 2016. Women of Egypt is 6 months old in June 2016. Mariam Al-Zomor asked us to feature her adventure with her sister in Africa. Al-Zomor sisters, Shaima and Mariam, had just summited Kilimanjaro. The two engineers had a passion for adventure, and they trained intensively to climb it. For practice, they climbed Mount Sinai at St. Catherine National Park in Egypt and other mountains in Egypt. They purchased their needed gear, and they went up all the way to Uhuru Peak, Kili's highest point, not deterred by the challenging terrain of the final climb. And of course, they sent us photos from the summit, which we happily added to their story. 6 months after Women of Egypt was launched, our inbox was and still is flooded with stories from women of all ages and from all walks of life, sharing their success stories and accomplishments. I don't think Al-Zomor sisters were the first women who summited Kilimanjaro, but they were the first who had sent us their stories of this accomplishment. See, stories of Egyptian women summiting mountains weren't something you read about in local newspapers or magazines. Not only that, but women accomplishments and successes in general were overshadowed and marginalized by men's. They still are to some extent, of course, but it has improved tremendously over the past 7 years since we launched Women of Egypt. As an avid newsreader myself, the void in covering women's news has always bothered me. And one of the main objectives of Women of Egypt was to fill this void. With more stories we received and published, we became a rich source for women news sought by renowned news organizations and institutions, local and international. And because of us, stories like Al-Zomor sisters became known to the people. We provided women with a platform to shine. For a CNN report about women bikers in Egypt, CNN's source was an article we published in Women of Egypt e-magazine. That's the extent of the drought of women news in Egypt. But after we published Mariam and Shaima's story, we received more stories from women in Egypt who summited Kili, Elbrus in Russia, Aconcagua in Argentina, and even attempts for Everest. Nurhan Rifai, the first Egyptian woman to summit Elbrus in Russia, became an expedition leader for groups of women and men to climb Kilimanjaro. And while we were empowering women by writing about them, giving them the exposure they deserved, they were not only inspiring others, but they were also inspiring us. They were inspiring me. And since the inception of Women of Egypt in 2016, we have featured tens of thousands of women with unique, inspiring, motivating stories. Women who are pushing the boundaries and breaking down stereotypes in the most challenging way you can imagine. Trailblazers and trendsetters. Women who are breaking glass ceilings and raising the bar. But in addition to that, we have also shared stories, sad stories and heartbreaking stories of women who are trapped in their communities and whom we share their stories anonymously to shed on the long way we yet have to work for equality. And over the course of 7 years, we have witnessed a transformation, an awakening. Today, The news is filled with stories of Egyptian women climbing Kilimanjaro, playing in the English Football League, riding their motorcycles and motorbikes to work, working as truck and cab drivers, driving the metro, flying Airbus A380-800, completing Ironman marathons, diving with the sharks, women who are skydiving instructors, oil rig engineers, car mechanics, police officers, UN peacekeepers, ship captains, an astronaut orbiting space, and a winner of 7 world champion titles in squash. If such stories are creating ripples today, or are received by a mere shrug, believe me, when we started, they had created tidal waves. So we succeeded in not only bringing these stories to the world, but also in improving the social adaptability to them and the change they're creating. In addition, with each achievement of these, it has set into motion a force of its own to inspire young girls. We brought to the light the stories of thousands of women who are role models for young girls to see and to believe there's nothing a woman cannot do. So how can we not be inspired by all these stories? And how can I not be inspired by all these stories? Kilimanjaro had been calling me. So now, how do you measure success? Is there a thing as KPI for an initiative or a movement? Today, we have collectively about 1 million followers on our various platforms, with a monthly reach between 8 and 10 million. And I'm proud to say we don't use clickbaits. If we did, we would have easily doubled or tripled this number. So imagine this, 8 to 10 million people around the world receive our message of empowerment every month. So how did we accomplish that? One post at a time, one story at a time, and repeat. I have been working since 2008 on women issues. That's about 8 years of advocating for women's rights prior to the launch of Women of Egypt initiative. 8 years of few successes, 8 years of mostly failures, glorious failures. Women of Egypt succeeded because it followed many failures. It was not born from vacuum. It was not a stroke of luck. And it didn't just happen. Many years of working for and about women issues with tens of thousands of tedious and mundane hours without any reward helped me understand and identify the void that needed to be built, to be filled. And when the time was right, I was prepared and I went for it. So whether it's a job, a business, an initiative, a skill, a book you want to write, or anything else, you have to work hard to see it materialize. To see it grow, it has to tend to take center stage in your life. You work on it on the days you're in the mood and on the days you don't feel like it. You work on it not only when you have time, but you work on it. You make the time for it to work on it. You work because you believe in what you're doing, and because the passion inside you is what drives and motivates you. You will work long hours You will be lonely most of the time, but you will still keep going because it is your mountain and it's your mountain alone to climb. You become laser focused and obsessed to climb it, no matter what challenges you face, how others discourage you, or what obstacles you might find on your way. You will not get to the summit in one leap, but rather in small and slow steps, one step at a time. Your purpose has to be bigger than the reward. And don't link them together so you don't get disappointed when you fail. And you will fail a lot. I do not read the future, but I know there's no success without failure. So go fail many times. Fail big, because that's the only road to the top. And on your journeys to success, the only reward you should be seeking is to change the world to the better by changing the life of one person at a time. And meanwhile, inspire others to follow suit. Since we started Women of Egypt, many similar initiatives were launched. Some are even copying our content. It really doesn't bother us at all. Competition is good. It keeps you on your toes. It's a good way to stay focused, and it helps to avoid becoming complacent. Not only that, the more women initiatives out there translates to more platforms that advocate women empowerment. And as the saying goes, empowered women empower women. So if our work empowers women enough to empower other women, we have succeeded. So whatever your calling is, don't worry about competition. The best business lesson the queen of media, Oprah Winfrey, ever learned was to approach her work like a horse race. She faced fierce competition in the late 80s and early 90s talk show market. And about competition, she said, and I'm quoting her here, "Run your own race. The way you step up your game is not to worry about the other guy, because you can't control the other guy. You only have control over yourself. So it's like running a race. The energy it takes to look back and see where the other guys are takes energy away from you. And if they're too close, it scares you. So that's what I would say to my team all the time. And I'm still quoting Oprah. Don't waste your time in the race looking back to see where the other guy is or what the other guy is doing. It's not about the other guy. It's about what you can do. You just need to run that race as hard as you can. You need to give it everything you got, all the time for yourself. Oprah Winfrey. So let's try to connect the dots here. Finding your Kilimanjaro is what I came here, or what I am here to talk about today. So you may be asking yourself now, how about me? Did I find my Kili? I guess I have always known where my Kilimanjaro is, ever since Apple and Mr. Disheveled talked about it on the fat, bulging screen of our TV. Now, I know much more about Kilimanjaro than I did when I was a child, but I have not climbed it yet. I had planned for my 55th birthday, but with COVID, my plans have changed. So instead, My gift to myself for my 60th birthday, which is next summer, is to summit Kilimanjaro, inshallah. So it is my mountain to climb. It has always been. I just did not know it then. I'm not a mountaineer, and I have no desire to climb any other mountain. Kili is the friendliest, and for me, it's the most beautiful. See, anyone can climb it, from children over the age of 10 to people in the 60s and 70s. All you need is determination and the will to go to the summit. There is a Kilimanjaro moment in each one of us. Everything you do will prepare you for this moment of launch. And when you go into your orbit, nothing will stop you. Believe in yourself, believe in your work, believe in your cause. Find your mountain and don't hesitate to climb it. Don't be afraid to climb it. You can do it, one step at a time. When you think you worked hard, work harder, work some more, and keep doing what you are doing until you are on the summit. Everything you work for will get you to where you want to be. Everything I've worked for since that day in front of the TV was preparing me for Kili, but I hadn't connected the dots yet. Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, the real Apple now, not the one that I was watching on TV, he once said, and I'm quoting him here, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future." Steve Jobs. Jobs never explained what he meant by this quote, and everyone interpreted it in the way that made sense to them. The meaning that resonated most with me is that everything I had worked for was preparing me for my dream trip to Tanzania to see the snow on Kilimanjaro. And believe it or not, all these years, still, the only snow I've seen was the ski slopes in my mother's freezer. So may you all find your Kilimanjaro, and I hope to see you on the summit. Thank you.